Hey guys, I've been wondering if tier 6 solo dungeons are worth doing rather than tier 7s or tier 8s because of their fast clear and relative safety. So for this video I did 100 tier 6 solo dungeons and tracked the rewards and tested it out. Now for my build I tried to match safety with clear speed, so I didn't go with the straight up Great Axe or Great Frost build for maximum clear speed, but rather took a spear build to maintain a little bit of safety using the Undead Cape Demon Boot combo, as well as the Hunter Hood if I got Dovidal, and the Cultist Robe for sustain. Now I used a pretty high tier build for doing tier 6 dungeons, but this was just because I thought it'd be pretty safe and I wanted to clear pretty much as fast as possible, so I wasn't wasting too much time. So to help with safety a little bit and to make it relatively convenient for me to go back and store the loot, I did these out of my guild's hideout. So I ended up doing the tier 6 dungeons in Parshand Cliffs, which is pretty deep into the black zone, which means you don't get a whole lot of divers or really action in that area. And it really paid off, as I only got dove one time in the entire 100 dungeons. Unfortunately I don't have the footage of it, but it was one of those rare occasions where it's a solo diver, and so I just turned around and killed them and went on with my day. But yeah, only dove one time. I never got ganked in between dungeons or anything like that, so very, very safe. Now this entire thing, doing the whole 100 dungeons, took me 12 hours, which works out to an average of around 7 minutes and 12 seconds per dungeon. But keep in mind, if you were to do this yourself, it'd probably take you a little bit longer, as you'd likely be using a little bit lower tier gear, especially if you weren't using one of those super speedy clear builds. So I decided to record some random stats while doing these 100 dungeons. So in the entire 100 dungeons, I went through 154 floors, which averages out to about 1.5 floors per dungeon. The max floors I got was 3. I think that was only 2 or 3 times, with most of them being either 1 or 2 floors. Coincidentally, I also got around 150 of the buff shrines, so it seems like there's about 1 buff shrine every floor. Now weirdly, for the buff shrines, I don't think they're purely RNG, as I got a significant more amount of green buffs and white buffs than I did red buffs, with green and white being 55 to 60 and red buffs being only 40. For chests, contrary to the name, uncommon chests were the most common. I encountered 111 of them throughout the 100 dungeons, so it means that there's at least 1 per dungeon on average, followed by 56 common green chests and 42 rare purple chests. So it seems like green and purple are around 1 every other dungeon, with greens being slightly more common than purples. I also encountered 2 legendary gold chests throughout the 100 dungeons. So you could say they're around 1 in 50 dungeons, but with a sample size of only 100 dungeons, it's a little bit hard to say if that's a reliable estimate or not. For the fame chests, I got 6 common green ones, 4 uncommon blue, and 3 rare purple fame chests, and those totaled to 281 of the beginner Tomes of Insight total, or 281,000 fame. Speaking of fame, the total fame that I received from doing these 100 dungeons was 7.5 million. This is not including the books that I got from the fame chests or any of the Tome of Insight drops. So that comes out to around 625,000 fame per hour. To put that into perspective a little bit, that means it would take around 54 hours to get a weapon or any one piece of non-artifact equipment from 0 spec to 100 spec. Moving on to the loot, I can definitely say that it is quantity over quality. There was not very many high tier or good expensive items that I received during these 100 dungeons. You can see there are some like 7.1 items here. Probably what's going to end up being most expensive here is the 6.2 glacial that I got. But most of the items that I received were around flat 4 to flat 6. Nothing too crazy or expensive. Moving on to the second tab, again, more boots. Capes, we received a fair amount of faction capes or city capes plus some demon capes here. We got like 4 Morgana capes, which are a decent chunk of change, and a Thetford and a demon. Bags, again, a fair amount of bags. You can see even like flat 4s out of 20 flat 4 bags. A lot of money seemed to come in just these bags of silver. I got almost 3 mil in just the silver bags. Tomes of Insight as well. Those are around 30k each, so that's actually quite a bit of money just from the tome drops from the mobs. Got some map drops as well. These aren't super expensive. The 7.2 solo map's probably going to be the most expensive one in there. And then runes and souls, I'm sure these are going to add up. Nothing too crazy by itself, but you can see over around 3.5k tier 4 runes, almost 1700 tier 5 runes, 500 tier 6s, and even like relics, 390 tier 4 relics are over a k each, so that's a lot of money. And some of the higher tier ones. Swiftclaw pups or cubs, got 6 of them, so those are around 100k each, that's pretty good money. And then all the random candles and stuff like that really probably isn't going to add up to too much. There's only a couple tier 6s in there. So I'm going to get this all sold and then add it all up, see how much it's all worth. I desperately need the money right now. So yeah, I'm just going to add this up and see how much it's all worth together. So for selling the loot, I pretty much dumped it all in Caerleon Market. I tried to sell most of it for around 10 to 20% less than the weekly average, just to make sure it sold so I could get accurate numbers. I'm not going to wait for it all to sell before I calculate the total. Some of the stuff I just sold to sell orders if they were good enough. And then the really high tier gear and more expensive stuff I sold to the black market if it was a better deal, which most of it was. Now, I ended up being pleasantly surprised with how much this stuff actually sold for. The gear, just like the weapons, armor, things like that, total sold for around 4.6 mil total. The bags sold for around 1.1 mil total. The maps around 800k. All like the runes and souls and relics combined sold for 1.4 mil. The special capes by themselves sold for around 1.2 mil. And then just from the bags of silver, that's around 3 mil. The tomes of insight by themselves, 1.9 mil. And the random miscellaneous stuff sold for around 950k. So this came out to a total of 16.4 mil. From 100 tier 6 solo dungeons, so this was more than I was expecting. So I was pleasantly surprised with the results, and I could see this being relatively consistent since a lot of the money came from those sort of consistent drops like runes and souls and the bags of silver, tomes of insight, things like that. So is it worth it? Are tier 6 solo dungeons worth it? Well, in my mind, I would say yes. With over 1 mil silver an hour and over 500k fame an hour for how safe they are. I mean, I only got ganked once, so to me that seems like a pretty valuable activity. Although I still have to test tier 7 and tier 8 dungeons to see how they stack up against those. Maybe that can be the topic for my next video. But on that note, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.